Welcome everyone. So we have with us here today Professor Robert Decay from USC. He's a professor of economics at USC, where he teaches undergraduate courses in macro and graduate courses in international finance. His areas of research include international finance and open economy macroeconomics, with a particular focus on the emerging markets of East Asia and the Japanese economy. He has also served as a visiting scholar with the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and as a staff economist with the IMF. Decay received a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Berkeley, and a PhD from Yale University. And we'll be talking today about product dynamics and aggregate shocks, evidence from Lebanese product and firm level data. So please help me in welcoming Dr. Decay.
Yep. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure. I'd like to thank Lila for inviting me, and it was a real pleasure to see Semru again, which we've had interactions over maybe 15, 16 years already. So I just want to talk, so rather than kind of going into the paper, diving into the paper, I want to kind of give the, what are we trying to do? And so the idea here is that it's a paper on productivity, So all of you know what productivity is. It's how much you have the certain amount of labor input and capital input, and it's how much output you get. But when productivity rises, you get more output, yeah? So this is a paper on how to raise, basically how to raise productivity. And a lot of the research on productivity deals with how do you raise productivity? Well, you think, let's raise education, or let's improve the infrastructure, right? Or let's do more R&D, things like that. So that's the traditional way of viewing increases in productivity, and which obviously benefit all economies. Emerging economies need higher productivity, and advanced industrialized economies need higher productivity. Here, this isn't the first paper to do this, but here what we thought about is that, well, it'd be nice to know a little bit more about the determinant. Is it all like supply side stuff? Meaning supply side stuff are things I talked about, infrastructure, education, tax policies. Is it all supply side, or can like demand side shocks improve productivity too? Like, foreign demand rises for your product, and does that improve your productivity? Or can large government spending improve your productivity? Or can a depreciated exchange rate, right, help your productivity? So foreign demand. Demand, well, macro shocks, yeah, demand-driven macro shocks. Can those?
Sounds Keynesian.
No, the model's not Keynesian at all. But model's not Keynesian. It's Nobu, so he doesn't. Okay. It's not. But that's. So it's demand. Keynesian people don't believe in demand. Keynesian people are short run, so they don't. There's no productivity improvement. There's no productivity improvement.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like spending.
Yeah, that's right. So output increases when you spend, right. but it's different from that. Here we always have full employment. There's no Keynesian effect there, but it's just that the demand side improves TFP. Right. Okay, so or productivity. So that's the idea. Now, this is applied. I'm mostly study. In fact, I almost entirely study the countries in East Asia, and those countries are huge manufacturing countries. I mean, China is like the workshop of the world, and so was Korea at one point, and Japan. But there's no reason why the framework and the thinking here can't be applied. So I talked with Semru a little bit and read a little bit about the Lebanese economy, and it seems like this economy is very based on services. Yeah, it has a very tiny manufacturing sector, maybe wine, and that's about. There's no reason why. So the idea is that the improvements in demand help raise the introduction of new products. And new products, if you have new products, that increases increases productivity, right? Because as you're innovating and having new products and things like that. But there's no reason, and it's kind of easy to see from the data, the introduction of new products in the manufacturing industry, and I'll show you that. But there's no reason, it's harder to kind of capture new products in the data in a service-based economy, but there's nothing to prevent the ideas in this paper to be applicable to a service economy. It's like, you know, introducing a new health center in a hotel, or introducing a new car service or a delivery service for food or groceries. All these are innovations. In fact, a lot of the U.S. innovations are now in the services sector, right? So a service-based economy, perhaps like Lebanon, can also introduce new services, which is like new products. So it's not that the data here is all in manufacturing. In fact, our model doesn't have anything. The data, we don't have any data on services, but it's not what we do here can be applicable to the service-based economy, service economy.
A lot of new.
Well, Turkey's, yeah, this is Turkey would fit right in here, but
it also has a lot of new services.
New service.
Food or something like that, which gets sold for like a million, you know, tens of
absolutely,
millions.
yeah.
So yemek sepeti, and hepsi burada.
Yeah.
These internet-based companies, you know, either selling retail,
Right.
food.
Yeah.
This has been an innovation.
You know, absolutely.
And maybe it generated spillover
yeah,
to
absolutely.
other sectors.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Increased
Right.
productivity maybe in other sectors.
Or yeah, you know, as sectors, or even in that industry as new. So that's the idea. So I don't want people to say, oh God, this is only relevant for East Asia or perhaps Turkey with big manufacturing. This is all can be relevant for. You could think of it in the same way for. It's just hard to measure. Services is very hard to new product and services are really hard to measure. Not like in goods and services, but it's certainly applicable to the Lebanese economy, I think, as well. Okay, so so the idea here. So what we do is. So what we do is, so traditionally, productivity growth, this is more of a economic sort of, you know, of what macroeconomists have done. But traditionally, these ideas of productivity growth were studied in a more long-run context, like, you know, 15, 20, 30 years. In fact, the Nobel Prize winner this year, and one of the two Nobel Prize winners, Paul Romer, right, did his important work to show that you can have these long-run kind of continuous long-run productivity improvements over long periods of time. But here we're more sort of interested in improvements in productivity at shorter frequencies, maybe 1 or 2 years. Can you right? So at what's called the business cycle frequency, rather than the very long run frequency.
But in Romer's model, what is getting that productivity increase over time? Isn't it education?
Like innovation. Like, yeah, so you have increasing returns to scale. So once the size of the economy gets larger, your average costs get lower, and it kind of keeps on improving that way as you're innovating. So that's his model, but ours is kind of more at the business cycle frequency. Is
there still room in Japan for innovation? Is there room still in Japan for
today? This is no. At the end, we're going to talk about yes. There's of course room for, but it comes from very different areas than it used to. So that we'll talk about it that at the end. Yeah. The literature reviews. So what we so these are examples of demand-induced product innovations. So we said, you know, traditional literature has mostly dealt with supply-side product innovations like new infrastructure, education, but these are examples of demand-side. These are kind of things we're thinking about. So, for example, 1984 to 86, Japanese economy was very strong, and the yen was weak. So, and foreign demand, especially from the U.S., was growing robustly, right? So this was thought to be a great era of Japanese innovation. You had semiconductor, supercomputers, Sony Walkmans, all these new products were coming out. Okay, so the idea of innovation here is not like, it's a little bit different from the long run innovation where, you know, you get into you do R&D for 6 years and you come up with a new product. The innovation here is that, and I think this applies to these examples, where corporations have products that are nearly ready to bring to the market. Like they've worked on it for a long time, and so they would have like a Sony Walkman, but they're not quite ready to introduce it. So this, in the service sector, it could be like a new service that's ready to be introduced, but you're not introducing it yet because they're not willing to do so unless the demand is strong during that year. So when the demand is strong, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we'll come out with our new product." You know, so that's the sort of mechanism. It's not something that would this innovating process that would take years to do. This product's already fairly ready to come to the market, but they're not willing to bring it to the market until, you know, the demand conditions, the market conditions are good, so that they can earn profits. And you'll see that when I show the picture or the chart, that these new products that are being introduced are not absolutely brand new, but they're kind of variations on existing products. So it doesn't take that long to bring these new products out to market. Okay?
Aren't new products extremely rare? I mean, true innovation.
Yeah, so that's right.
They're very lumpy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's mostly improvements.
That's right.
When
so
we say new products,
yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about improvements on
existing products. That's right. So that's, but we'll see that.
Is there a paper about this lumpy innovation? There must be like Aggregate.
Yeah, there must have been. Yeah, in the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, 90s.
Yeah.
People were studying.
Yeah, yeah.
Or a history of thought or something.
Mm-hmm.
Economic history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. New railroads and.
Computer. When was the computer made? Railroads.
Railroads. Yeah.
Computer.
Yeah. Those are major, and we're not talking about that here. These are.
What
Yeah.
I'm saying is,
Yeah.
you know, true innovations are rare. So
Rare.
it's just adding to your story.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. These are.
That most innovations are refinements.
Refinements of existing
and even
ones.
maybe if you think about research, it's like that too.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So research is a good example in that, you know, you have 5 kind of papers lying around, and then they spin off additional papers as you get ideas of working on these 5 papers. Things like that. It's rather than coming up with a great, like Keynesian economics or something from the blue, it's kind of working on some papers and then spinning off additional papers from the existing papers. So yeah, we're talking about those kind of innovations, not major, brand new ones. Okay, so what we do here is not entirely new. There's a, for example, Schmuckler did a careful empirical study on innovations in the U.S. and tried to find out whether they're due to supply-side kind of determinants or demand-side determinants, doing a case study of textiles and other industries. And he tended to find that innovation was determined a lot by demand shocks rather than R&D, like tax policies and other things. So that was interesting, and Schleifer had his dissertation was on kind of the idea we had here that companies have already a lot of innovative products out there, but they don't come to market unless market conditions are really, really good, right? So we're sort of kind of taking off on that a little bit. What we do, but this is almost really an entirely empirical paper. We estimate, what we try to do is be a little bit more formal to see whether these good introductions are determined by demand or supply shocks. And well, thank you for coming. And so we just estimate the relationship between the number of new products introduced by firms and macro shocks such as government demand, foreign demand, and total factor productivity, right? And so we classify the first two as demand shocks. First, government demand and foreign demand as demand shocks, and classify total factor productivity shocks as the supply shocks. And we find that the two demand shocks are stronger, generally more important than what are supply shocks, right? Okay, so that's the paper. So the contribution is, you can't do this kind of work on U.S. data because in U.S. what you need are the number of products by firm. So you need number of products by firm every year, annually, right? And so in the US, you can only get the number of products by firm every 5 years. And why do you need annual data? Because, well, we said we're interested in the business cycle, things that occur over 1 or 2 years. And if you have only data that's available every 5 years, well, you're going to miss out on these business cycle kind of fluctuations, right? So you need annual data on how many products each firm has every year. So basically, there's a theory behind this specification, which I'm not going to get into in this paper, but what we want to see is how much each firm, so NI refers to the number of firms, T the time, and this is the change in the number of products by firm. And this is the demand, foreign demand, so a shock that comes from outside the Japanese economy. And this is the shock that comes from government demand. And this is the shock that comes from total factor productivity. Yeah?
Can they be interpreted as time dummies or something like that? If this is the pen
No,
no?
we actually...
No identification problem of like confounding them with time dummies or something like that? You don't have a problem with that?
Well, we actually estimate these by, you're right, when we actually estimate it, we do it by industry. So this will be the TFP shock for the, I don't know, 20 or 30 industries. Okay. And so we don't really do it, you're exactly right. If this were just only time, then the time dummy would capture everything. But we actually have industry data. Yeah. So.
Multi-level data?
This is, yep. So the data is, I'll get into the data, but it's the number of products. I'll answer your question as we get there, the data structure, okay? So, and this is the number of products in the previous period. So, yeah. Okay. So let's get just to get to your question. So again, you can't do this in the U.S. and this is what the Japanese have done is that they survey all the manufacturing firms in Japan every year. So it's called it's not a random sample, but it's what's called a census, where all the firms in Japan are surveyed, and each firm has to list the number of products it's making each year. So you know, you might get Sony, and Sony would come up with, I'll show you the categories, but at the 6-digit level, what kind of products it's making, maybe eight different categories of products, and then you go into Toyota, and you know, they'd have sort of similar things, and you get that annually, and you have other kind of information on each company, right? That's and includes, what's nice about the census is that if you're doing macro and you want data, you just don't want listed companies, because listed companies only cover a smaller fraction of the economy, right? So you want to try to capture the entire economy, and to do that, you want to get a census. So all the firms with over 5 employees are surveyed in this census. Yeah.
And they do it every year.
They do that every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
HS4 data you mean for the product?
Hmm?
HS4 and HS6 products, those are the 4-digit, you mean HS4 or HS6?
Not for exports. I'll show you the categories. There's 6. They're industry classifications. So we have a little table there. Okay. So so what we have is yeah, it's a very good data set. I think that's the main thing here. So what we call, these are the definitions. We have sectors, industry, and products. So sectors, I think this is the same in Lebanon and other countries. Sectors would be at the 2-digit level, yeah, and industries are defined as the 4-digit level, and products are at the 6-digit level. So this is kind of small, but this would be at the 2-digit level, a sector. What we call a sector would be information and communications, electronic equipment. Okay, so that would be the sector. The industry would be digital camera. Okay, so this is part of the information and communications. And digital camera will be what's called an industry, and of that, you know, the product will be digital camera and parts, attachments, and accessories of digital cameras, right? You know, you take another one, electronics, 2-digit level, 4-digit level will be electronic audio equipment, and you would have stereo sets, car stereo sets, tape recorders, digital audio players, hearing aids. So these would be at the 6-digit level. So these would be called products. So what happens is that if a you know, Matsushita Electric, for example, introduces a new product category, so they would kind of enter into here. But I think these are fairly broad. It's not like introducing a new variety of a hearing aid, right? That's not going to show up as a new product. So it's actually a pretty, in some sense, a reasonably big innovation to appear as another category here. Yeah.
So you're going to look to see if the categories increase.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a pretty big innovation.
Mm-hmm. Because it would be, yeah. So it's not like another different variety of a tape recorder. It would be like a different category. Yeah. So that would be the innovation here. So each of these, when these 6-digit level, a company would have, you know, would record, these will be recorded, but if another product comes in, it would put in, it's actually an innovation at the company level, not the industry may already have these sets, but it's when a company introduces the new product, it'll show up as a new product in our data set. Yeah. So Sony could have, so what the story is that Sony could have all these products, but if there's another firm with only 3 of these products, but it introduces 2 more, it will show up as 2 an increase in products of 2 for that different company. So Matsushita, yeah? So that would be the innovation.
Just a copy, or they would have to patent it? The
No, it could be yeah. So you're right. It's a
like using the patent of the original Sony, or you have to patent the
no, I don't know if you have to patent it, but suppose that Sony's making. You can't. Walkman's not a category, but so suppose that Sony's making a certain certain stereo set, and Sansui Electronics also it has a new stereo set. It starts making stereo sets.
Right.
The assumption here is that the stereo set made by Sony and the stereo set made by Sansui Electronics are 2 different distinct products, and it represents an innovation.
They probably have a patent, or they have to at least buy a patent. And make
For some products, they probably do have patent.
Put your brand on it, I guess.
Well, I think you're allowed to make similar products. Yeah, although they kind of these companies are well known to copycat each other and make very similar products. But they would be considered an innovation. Yeah, in that case. So so that's the. So these charts are kind of interesting. So what we have here is that in the change in the total so this is between 2000 and 2009. Each company produces, some shipment, or that's the amount of stuff that goes out from the company, right? That's the output. Like, if you add all the shipments, you get the entire gross output of the economy. So that's like the output of the economy on average, and you can decompose this change in output. How does the output of an economy change? Output of the manufacturing sector change, and you could decompose that output into the entry of new firms, right? The exit of existing firms, so meaning that the economy is a dynamic place. This is true in Lebanon, right? New companies enter, and old companies fail all the time, right? So an entry is when the new company is entering, and an exit is when an old company is exiting. And so you can decompose the entire change in the number of in the quantity of shipments into the entry of new companies, the exit of new companies, also the addition of products by existing companies, and the dropping of products of existing companies, right? So, and then the increase in the amount of quantity of quantity produced of existing products. So, so this is when like a small Japanese stereo manufacturer fails and exits the market. That would be the exit, fall in the number of output produced by resulting from the exit of that firm, and the entry will be, say there's a new small boutique company entering and making stereos. That would be entry. And but existing companies.
What happened in 2001, 2002?
2001 and 2002. Yeah, I guess this was a year where there was a lot of churning in the product. Yeah.
Was it like recession?
Yeah, it was a bad year.
It was a recession year.
Yeah.
Instead of Japan's last decade, or.
Yeah, no, this last decade was a little earlier, but it was a recession year. Yeah.
Recession year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of churning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right? When there's
Yeah.
recession, you might have, recession is like lots of firms leaving maybe,
Mm-hmm.
some firms contracting, but then some firms might find it be able to commit as well.
mhm.
So we call that churning, right?
mhm.
Or reallocation.
Reallocation, yeah. So this is basically measuring reallocation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the internet advertising.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So
So,
maybe some electronic companies were
Yes,
not.
I
Yeah.
think so.
In Japan, right?
Mhm.
That's the dot-com bubble.
so okay.
Right. Yeah.
And also you could, so those are the things with the entry of firms, exit of firms, firms adding products, firm dropping products, and also the firms increasing the existing product, output of the existing product. So if you're making, car stereos, that's the total quantity of car stereos that you're shipping could be increasing or it could be decreasing. So the total output can be divided into those, total change in output can be divided into those categories.
It's interesting to look at it this way.
Yeah.
Not because in business cycles we just look at like the drop in output or something.
Yeah, but this
Here
is
you see
this
the churning.
this is but this
Yeah.
you can measure output here, but this is the way you're decomposing the output
It's
here.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so what we do, so what we find is that, and this is similar in the people have done this in the U.S., but what we find is that the largest contributor to the change in quantity is the change in existing the quantity of existing products or right. But the second largest is the adding and drop. Maybe it's kind of obvious. Adding and dropping products by existing firms. And entry and exit of firms, the actual entry and exit of firms doesn't add much or subtract much for the change in product. This is kind of obvious, right? But a lot of the models have emphasized a lot the entry and exit of firms. But that doesn't happen that often in terms of changing the total quantity of products. So that's the idea here, and okay, and that another thing is that the gross changes in products is much larger than the net change in products. So the net change in products is the difference between the number of products added and the number of products that are dropped. But each company at every point in time is both adding products and dropping products at the same time. So each time, so what you want is some story that would explain the fact that this gross change is very big. That why would a company be adding and dropping products at the same time? Okay, so another thing we do is that we compare data on exporters and non-exporters, right? And one of the things that we find is so these companies, exporters are, you can we don't have data on exported products or imported products, but we do have data on whether a company is an exporter or importer. And so we find that exporters add products much more vigorously than non-exporters. So what you see in this graph is average change in the number of products, but this green line is average number of products exports left scale. The average number of products of exporters is much larger than the number of products of in the entire average number of products in the entire economy. So what this says, so a typical exporter in 2007 had about two products that they were exporting, whereas a typical firm in Japan had about 1.7 products. So exporters typically have more products than non-exporters, right? and the number of, and exporters are more vigorous. Every year they add products and drop products at a much higher rate than non-exporters. Okay, so these are that's another fact of this, right? So key features we need to explain is simultaneous adding and dropping of products in both booms and recessions. So why would you drop products in a boom, right? So the surprise is that if the economy is really strong, why would you be dropping products, right? So you want to explain the simultaneous adding and dropping of products in both booms and recessions. Another thing is, why do exporters add and drop products more vigorously than non-exporters? So I'm going to skip over the theory because I don't think people will be that interested in it. But what we do is essentially the model kind of works like this. The model where these equations are derived work like this, in that, you know, in each period there's a company will have kind of new products that they can develop, right? But sometimes these products don't develop very well, and they sort of fail, right? So every year you have products that are coming in, and your innovation is successful, your innovation process is successful, and products come into the market. But in other years, these products are not successful, so they drop out of the market. So every year you're going to have these products entering in the market and products dropping out of the market, because simply the innovation process is very risky. And that's the idea. But on top of that, you have these macro shocks hitting the economy. And when a macro shocks hits the economy, then new firms would enter the economy, or existing firms would start new product lines, because that would mean that profits for these new products would increase or change, right? So the introduction of new products is, or leaving the market, depends on macroeconomic shocks that raise or lower the productivity of the new product, right? So that's one thing. And another thing that's affecting the introduction of new products, regardless of the business cycle, is this kind of natural process of innovation, where you have lucky draws, and your product is very favorable, so you bring it to the market, or the product just fails because it's not a good product. So you have these two things going on at the same time, and that gives you this pattern of, even on average, you have new products coming in or old products going away, and also the entire, or when you have business cycle shocks, favorable shocks, overall the number of new products goes up, and unfavorable business cycle shocks, the overall your rate of new products goes down in that case. So it's these two things going on simultaneously that gives you the pattern of, even in times of a boom, you have companies adding products and companies dropping products. Okay, so that's the basic idea. To explain that, one thing that that's kind of going on a little bit here is that we have this. So that explains the change in the number, how these macroeconomic shocks affect the change in the number of products by firm. The only other thing we need to explain is why the existing number of products, right, affect the change in the number of products. And So in our story, if you have if you have 6 products, right, introducing the 7th product will be easier because you already have this kind of existing stock of products where you can introduce new products. But it's like research, yeah. So it's like if you have 5 papers, you know, you could introduce new products. but the rate is yeah. So that like, but the rate of change is decreasing. So if you have 10 existing papers, the 11th paper will increase, but at a diminishing rate. So that's the idea here. Yeah. So if you have NIT, the change in the number of products will increase, but at a decreasing rate so you don't have increasing returns to scale. You have diminishing returns to scale to the existing number of products. Although you'll have more products, they're not going to increase at a higher rate. They're going to increase at a lower rate. That's kind of what this is.
That sign to be negative.
Negative, yeah. So that's right.
The idea of convergence.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's the convergence.
Maybe it's not research.
Yeah.
Maybe it is research. In the initial one, if you think of effort in terms of research, the effort is decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the negative of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what you're going to find here. Yeah.
If you had effort as n.
So you have that, and then you have these macroeconomic shocks. Yeah.
Every paper is circular. I don't think it gets any easier. So I take it back anyway.
So our story gives us this estimation equation. You have the change in the number of products as a function of the foreign demand, government demand, and the total factor productivity. So you could kind of estimate, we do a lot of work to calculate these things for every year.
But is aggregate TFP a good measure of supply shocks? People say, like Steve Davis, even like in our MBA paper, it doesn't really move around. It's got an aggregate TFP. Now, sectoral or industry?
Yeah, this is industry. I'm sorry, industry aggregate. Yeah. So you have some cross.
TFP does move around.
Yeah. So we have industry. Yeah, we have industry.
Because, if you were using aggregate TFP,
yeah,
it's almost uninformative about anything.
Yeah.
And certainly not about the business cycle or anything like that.
Yeah. No. We use industry level, industry time TFP. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So. Now in the we have in the model we have a full-blown DSG model that I just summarized in words, and you could run what's called the impulse response function. So you have this is the total number of products and how it behaves according to shocks to aggregate TFP. And so it goes up and then it comes down, yeah, for time. And then you could look at that, it's how much and how the number of products behaves according to when you have these foreign demand shocks.
Actually, it's increasing there and staying high. Increasing and staying high.
Increasing and staying high, yeah. So the bottom line of the paper is foreign demand shocks matter a lot in our paper, and this theory sort of shows that. That's right. And this is how from one standard deviation shock to government demand, right? So we want to look at, well, does our data accord? When we do the estimation, does it sort of accord with these theoretical predictions? So this is the change in the number of products. So we look at, this is in all firms, and you have the log foreign demand, log, these are by industry, and log TFP, And we add, in some specifications, the real exchange rate and the number of products in the last period.
Hard to see these numbers.
I know, we should have...
Is it possible to make it bigger?
Is that, do you think we can, or? Yeah, we should have.
On the PDF, can't you make it bigger?
No, I don't think so.
No?
What's important is that they're all significant.
Oh.
And the coefficient matters as well, but you're right. Yeah, in empirical work of this kind, yeah, the coefficient matters, but it's mainly the significance of the numbers. So this is always negative. So who was mentioning about the negative sign of the number of products? Yeah, it's diminishing returns to scale. That so that holds. Government demand is important. This TFP comes in as a negative. It has the wrong sign, and so the largest coefficient is foreign demand in terms of the changing the number of products. Yeah, so. And so government spending and foreign demand have the most positive effects on the number of new products. Foreign demand has the largest effect.
So what does that mean? So Chinese young people start demanding, I don't know, what can they demand?
So these are business cycle shocks, yeah? I mean, so...
it's not secular.
It's not secular. So,
right.
But the global economy is good in certain years, maybe like today, right? And then a country, Korea, that's the change of the number of products in Korea sharply goes up in that year, owing to this increase in foreign demand, and that increase is much larger than had Korea expanded its domestic economy through government spending or improved its productivity, so or with better education or what have you. That's what this is saying. This is looking at exporters, just looking at exports. Again, for exporters, it's...
Okay, but so that's a short run effect. But if it's productivity, it should have some long run. So you increase number of goods this year because conditions were good.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
result in next year you also increase because of because NT is increased? Yeah, one. Mm-hmm.
It might not. So it does build up a stock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a stock effect.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's good in that sense. So if you can take advantage of good shock,
yeah,
you can build up your stock, and next year you can continue.
That's
to
right.
expand.
That's right.
Huh?
Yeah. Eventually, it returns to the long run, but that takes a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do benefit from
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is also a lesson for countries. Take advantage of good times to, you know,
Introduce. Yeah. Do innovation. Mm-hmm.
New innovation.
That's right. So that's one of the takeaways of this. But foreign demand shocks are especially important. I mean, again, each country is different, but Japan during this period, take advantage of foreign demand shock is really important. Government spending is fine. Structural policies
Education.
didn't work, but Japan's different. For emerging markets, a little bit different, but for Japan, structural policy is so developed in infrastructure and everything. Anymore is not going to didn't do anything in the 2000s. Okay, but for other countries, if you do this estimate, maybe it's different. The TFP supply side policies may matter a lot for new products. So.
Professor, what about the RTFP, the relative TFP?
We'll get to that in a minute. We haven't introduced this yet, but we're going to introduce that variable. Yeah. So now it doesn't. Instead of the change in the number of products, this is what's called the Davis-Halterwenger measure of the change in the number of products. But you get the same result for robustness. Okay, and for exporters, the same thing. So Okay. So next we introduce. This is not in the model because in the model the change in TFP and the change in the number of products is sort of the same thing. That productivity is always driven by introduction of new products. So putting in firm level TFP doesn't matter because it's the same. It correlates perfectly in the model, but in the real world it doesn't. I mean, sometimes things like where the firm is located affects which part of the country the firm is located affects its productivity level, right? So you might want to put in what's called. So we end up. This is kind of interesting empirical. We ended up calculating TFP for each company for multi-product firms, and there's our co-authors did this, but there's a way to do that of calculating total factor productivity for multi-product firms, and we use that we use that methodology to calculate firm level TFP. When we did that, the first thing was that firm level TFP was not significant. So what our co-authors did was put in firm level TFP and the squared firm level TFP and they were arguing, and our point was that TFP doesn't affect the introduction of new products in a linear way, but it affects it in a more quadratic way, right? So you had to, the relationship changes depending on the level of firm level TFP. So we find that, so we introduce TFP, firm level TFP, relative TFP plus TFP squared, right? A, and B, yeah? And so to look at how this term affects the introduction of new products, not in a linear way, but in a quadratic way. And we find that from the pattern of coefficients that the guys doing the most, only firms with very high TFP levels really find that they can, that affects their new product innovation. Kind of low TFP firms, it doesn't seem to matter very much whether they can introduce. So that's an interesting finding.
So
but
supply side does matter.
At the firm, aggregate TFP or industry level TFP doesn't matter, but firm level TFP does. So so these are not like policies that countries can do,
right.
but
Firms can do.
Yeah, okay, and things like that. Yeah.
Or how they work. Or
How they work, and yeah, management is something the model doesn't take into account. Like management matters. Yeah. Yeah. So management. That's right. So companies very high level management can introduce new products, but low level doesn't matter. It's got to go over a certain point. Yeah. I guess that's what quadratic means. So yeah. So that's another takeaway. Management matters. Your management and in affecting introduction of new products. So okay, and we do this again. How to Wenger measure? You see the same patterns. So what we do next is at this until now we just include the levels of the shock variables like foreign demand and government demand. But now what we do is to better measure shocks. We just look at the residuals. So we measure all these. We run AR1 regressions for all these level variables and take the residual to better measure the shock component of these macro shocks. And we use the residual as as an explanatory variable, and the results are same as before. So just to summarize, you have foreign demand, really important, government demand, relatively important. Aggregate TFP doesn't give you the right sign, and you have the firm level TFP matters for firms with very high level productivity. Right? So that's the, and we find the same pattern for the Davis and Haltewenger result. So what is the, what's the implication of our kind of empirical work for neoclassical growth? So, you know, I think our empirical results don't contradict this. So TFP is the measured, the TFP that you measure in the data is a combination of the existing number of products and this exogenous component of TFP that we include in this, including our regressions, right? So what we do in our empirical work is to try to strip out, in trying to get ZT, we try to strip out this number of products component, or sort of by taking out, you know, we think this is related to things like software, the contribution of software to firm level productivity, and R&D to firm level productivity. But because of data limitations, we just take expenditures on software, and we subtract out the expenditures from software from measured TFP to get this exogenous component. Because otherwise, this measured TFP also includes this component that changes with this. This is endogenous. Our number of products actually change with these shocks. So, but the implication of that is that you know, when there's a, this is what Simmer was talking about. When there's a positive business cycle shock, the stock of products goes up, and that raises the aggregate TFP level, and so you have this kind of dependence on when a shock it's the effect on TFP kind of goes on for a long time as the number of products increases, right? And so and this is kind of a long time. It lasts, you could do, we show that these macro shocks last for 20 to 30 years, have long productivity effects.
So you don't have to have an endogenous growth.
Well, this,
no,
that's, so this is like...
You may need an endogenous growth model, but this is almost mimicking some aspects of it.
Absolutely. So that's what, but my co-author didn't want to push that too hard. Like, Nobu didn't want to piss off all the endogenous growth people.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So
but actually, this is an endogenous growth effect.
It is, yeah. So
I mean, it looks like one.
It looks like one.
It may not be
that's right.
You're talking
Yeah.
about, but it looks like.
That's right. So that's it's what, with a classical RBC model, you can mimic endogenous growth, yeah. And so that was the.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. But you know, we so that's the kind of.
Prescott should like it.
I guess so. Right. Yeah. So, but rather than kind of these, you know, aside from the theoretical niceties, what this, for policy purposes, I think what this is saying is that if you have a macro shock and you take advantage of it, like a foreign demand shock, you can have long-run 20, 30 years long-run productivity improvements, which is a kind of a really big thing. So countries should, you know, try to take advantage of these macro. Yeah.
Is introducing new products a good thing?
Absolutely.
But you know, given that aggregate TFP has a negative relationship with new products, this maybe means that if aggregate TFP increases, then you have less products. And this is because the industry is doing very well with its existing products. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to innovate or introduce new products. You know, introducing new products sometimes is a sign of weakness because it means that the company is not doing well with its existing products.
Yep, then it's dropping these existing products, which is a good thing. So they're getting rid of old products and they're introducing these new products. So that's better than keeping these old products. Yeah, so it's innovate. Yeah. Okay. So that's the policy implication of this. So conclusion, what an increase in foreign demand has a big effect on increasing the number of products, and government demand is less important. So these, another thing that TFP doesn't, we have very bad effects for TFP in this paper. The empirical effects they go the opposite way, and one of the reasons is that I think coming back to this equation is that it's really hard to measure the kind of this. We need an exogenous component of TFP, but it's mixed in with this endogenous component. So we're not getting a really pure to these. You know, as you know, in regressions, the right-hand side variables have to be exogenous, right? They can't be endogenous or correlated with the error term or something. But our TFP measure is not really I mean, we just take away kind of software expenditures or R&D expenditure, but it's a very impure, bad measure of TFP, and that could be why we're getting this bad effect. So maybe structural policies matter, but we can't really. You know, we can interpret it two ways. It's a bad measure of TFP, or structural measures don't matter. Yeah. I guess Prescott always says it's a bad measure. Yeah. If it doesn't work, that's what.
He's using like R&D expenditure.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what someone told me, that if it doesn't work, it's a bad measure. Okay, so anyway. You see, this is a paper that has Keynesian elements and neoclassical elements, so everyone's happy with this paper. So these demand effects, right, appear larger than the supply effects of a rise in exogenous TFP. So, and this increase in the number of products will have an effect on increasing Japanese aggregate TFP in the future, right?
If it hasn't increased in Japan, with the increased number of products, they must be doing something really wrong.
Yeah. So what we're in our conclusion, what we say, and my co-authors from Japan, I think, have a really good feel on it because they consult from. In the Japan is aging very rapidly, okay, and its domestic economy is shrinking because of its aging, and its population is shrinking, and working age So its domestic economy is during this period and now is not so important. So that's why things like government demand doesn't affect doesn't affect the number of products so much, but foreign demand does, and exchange rate depreciation does too. We didn't talk much about that, but exchange rate depreciation, real exchange rate depreciation will help the introduction of the number of products. So one policy implication of this work is that the country needs to, continue to develop trade relations with Asia, China, and other countries, because that's really important in introducing the number of products and productivity growth in Japan in the future. Rather than in the past, you would think it's always an export-orienting, but it wasn't. It was the domestic economy was much more robust in the past. So our policy recommendation is that they have to really continue to look outward and become more export-oriented. They're already export-oriented, but not even more so to increase, because their domestic economy is just not growing anymore. So that's our policy recommendation. But in terms of, and it's the same in other Asian countries, although China can't do it so much. It's too big to really export anymore. But certainly for, I don't know, just talking to you about Lebanon. Lebanon is very...
should increase its external relations.
Absolutely. So too domestic oriented, as you were saying.
Yeah.
They're, right, I was talking to you. What was your name? Kim. So we were talking a little bit, and you were saying, oh, you know, Lebanon has all these problems, but it seems like
Forget the
internal problems. Yeah, if they look out. They should. And for a service-oriented economy, that means bringing in, you know, tourism is important. Yeah, absolutely, and of various forms.
Some high-tech FDI.
FDI, yeah, high-tech FDI. So, and that would help. Like, these are not brand new prescriptions. Looking, becoming an export-oriented economy is, I think everyone wants to do that, right? For the last 60 years in development, says you should be a export-oriented economy, but yeah. But I think that's true. Looking, who was saying Lebanon was looking more inward? Some people were saying last couple of years, it's rather than looking outward, it's become more inward. That's not a good thing for product of growth at all. Yeah. So that's another. Certainly, you were saying that
I think
Lebanon was becoming more internally. Yeah.
I think even this has become very. Even our econ department, I think the whole thing should just focus out. Like even AUB has become very
insular,
insulated, and it was not created like that. And its solution to its problems are just forming lots of external ties.
Okay, so that's the conclusion of this paper, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Actually, we wanted all that to happen to Lebanon, but because the political situation, it doesn't happen in Lebanon. Like, for instance, if you go to Israel, just a couple of months, Intel invested like 11 billion, but Intel would not come to Lebanon.
Don't be negative.
Microsoft would not come to Lebanon. Came in small scale. We've been trying for a very long time. They don't come.
Hard enough.
Like, if you go like to the Arab country, they have like you know, a
decree
not allowing their citizens to come to Lebanon.
That's not how it works.
Not allowing other citizens to come. Yeah.
Yeah, like Arab
I don't
Emirates.
think it's true.
If you come to Lebanon, they put you in jail.
To who comes here?
If Arab Emirates come to Lebanon, they put them in jail.
Why?
They just make a decision, political decision.
Someone from UAE comes here and you put them in jail?
Is that a Muslim country?
Really? Why would you put... These are another Muslim country, though.
They put you in jail.
From the UAE?
Yeah. If you
UAE, that's...
Arab Emirates come to Lebanon, because it's not allowed to come to Lebanon, they put them in jail.
This is not true. This is not true. Don't take away from the message. Don't take away from the message.
It's true.
You're just trying to rationalize. Lebanon's future forming external ties. AUB more external ties.
Saudi just lifted the restriction for their citizens to come to Lebanon. Emirates, we were hoping that they will lift that restriction. They haven't done that.
Why don't they? Why do they have that restriction?
Because they have. It's a long story.
It's a long.
We'll talk later. It's the truth.
Because of the war in Syria.
Because of the war in Syria, because of Hezbollah, because of a lot of things. So it's more politics.
But going back to your model, so Nissan putting the CEO, the Lebanese CEO in jail was not a good idea.
It's a law. That's what happened.
I say also, the Lebanese CEO, absolutely. that's very bad for Japan. Yeah,
very bad.
Very
How
bad.
did it affect using the policy implications
Yeah.
of the model?
Yeah.
That has destroyed or affected negatively the demand for Nissan worldwide.
Absolutely. And that's bad. That's very bad. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Being a foreign CEO had a bad effect?
No. Putting Gaussian in jail has affected the demand for Nissan.
Yeah, and then it's hurting.
So we
Japan,
can expect Nissan not to innovate.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's another reason why I think Japan's problem is this. It's a socialist. I mean, we were talking about it's a socialist economy.
It's introverted.
It's an island. Yeah.
It's very insular.
Insular. Become that.
It's not maybe
Yeah.
introverted, but it's
Yeah. So that's kind of why we're recommending this. That it's got to be more externally oriented.
like
Yeah.
they won't
They're
bring
opening
in-
up now.
They won't bring in immigrants.
They don't.
They are changing
Yeah.
their
A
mind now.
little bit, but
Slowly,
I mean,
yeah.
Decided to take immigrant this
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
high skill maybe, but they still don't.
No, they
Yeah.
want labor.
yeah. But I think the Gone thing is, it's an inequality, and he was earning 50 times the typical Japanese CEO, right? Like $80 million, and Japanese CEO makes about 1.5 or 2.
So that's the amount he accumulated. He was making like 15, 16 million.
15, 16 million. Okay, still, but
The
yeah,
deferred payment is like 80 million.
80 million. Okay, so I think that that and some issue. So that's part of it, and the other is that he wanted Renault to have a larger stake in the combined firm, and that ticked off the Japanese managers, and so that they,
And all the fancy houses that he built all over the world for himself.
including one in Lebanon, right? Yeah. Anyway, so
But that affected the demand for Nissan.
it affected the demand for Nissan. So, but yeah, but he's a great manager. He's done a lot of things for the company. And yeah, go ahead.
Start ask questions.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Questions.
Because you look at the Japanese model and the Chinese, because like a lot of the collapse in the Japanese economy happened after you mentioned and after the Plaza Accord, where they devaluated the value
That's
of
right.
the dollars, and the Japanese never really recovered from that.
You're exactly right. That's right. Yeah. To this day, they have not really recovered.
Do you think the Chinese are studying that period and they really
Yeah.
very careful of keeping their currency low? They can be competitive.
No, your question is very insightful, because I'm asked this a lot, and by the Chinese people, and the Chinese people have really studied that period, and
The last decade.
well, the 80s.
Yeah.
They, as he's saying, they never really recover from the exchange rate appreciation. Yeah, yeah. So there's two things that was going on: the strength of the Japanese yen, which hurt their export sector, and exports are so important, as we've seen in this paper. And the other is the difficulty in intellectual property, in accessing American intellectual property at a very low rate, and that kind of ended in the 79, 80. So those two things hurt TFP growth in Japan. The first thing hurt TFP growth in Japan. The second one hurt exports. And I think the Chinese are very aware of that. So they're very they don't want their currency to become too stronger, and also they don't want to agree to a lot of the restrictions on accessing U.S. intellectual property when there's FDI. That's a really important for them. It's very important in getting technology transfers, and so they're not agreeing to not push U.S. firms to share their technology when they invest. They don't want to do that.
Big enough.
What?
Big enough economy so that
They're actually forcing these American companies to disclose some of their.
That's right, but they,
when they open.
That's right.
In China, and they cannot say anything because they lose.
No, so Chinese.
That's what Trump is fighting for.
That's what but the Chinese don't want to give up that, because they know if they do, then they're not going to grow as
I
fast.
didn't realize this was the problem with Japan too.
Yeah, well, that was a big problem in Japan in the 80s.
20 years later, written by Harvard.
I didn't read that.
Japan was but Japan had this exactly the same issue with intellectual property in the U.S.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. So.
But isn't the second question is the technology is really evolving. Technology that we can like eliminate a lot of product because it's regrouping. If you take that phone, it's not really a phone. This could be like 10, 15 item in that phone. So with the artificial intelligence that's coming with China 2025, so what's gonna happen? Of course, productivity gonna go like up the roof, but product is gonna go down, and so is labor.
Yeah, so there's two things going on that I actually if my paper on robotics were ready, I would have presented that here, but I'm working on a paper on robotics and labor using Japanese data, and so there's a famous paper about Asimoglu, and Restrepo that used U.S. data and showed that the introduction of robotics lowers labor demand in the U.S.
Everywhere.
Well, no.
100 million will be lost in
It's not that. Acemoglu understands the offsetting effects. Okay, so there's three effects in his paper, in his model. There's three effects of introducing robotics. One is in an industry or firm, you introduce robots, and it's his idea is that robots are always going to be, if the technology exists for robots to displace labor in a particular task, it'll always be cheaper to use the robot, right? So one is displacement of labor by introducing these robots because these tasks are being replaced. But there's two offsetting effects. One is that for each industry or firm, as you introduce robots, the firm becomes more efficient. And so it could kind of hire more workers in other tasks, right? The cafeteria or management or what have you. That's one effect. And the second effect is that as these companies, let me finish, kick out these workers, wages decrease in other sectors, or the entire economy, and they could hire the other sectors, like say automobiles improves in efficiency, and people get kicked out of the automobile industry. They can go to services or hotels, because hotels would hire them because they'll be cheaper, and the size of the hotel industry would expand, and the demand for automobiles would expand because these other sectors expand, and so there's two offsetting effects, and he shows that these offsetting effects of robots, the negative effect is larger, but I've kind of in much better Japanese robotics data, I show that the offsetting effects are larger. So robots actually raise the demand for labor in these each industries, right? So you can't. I think he realizes, and robots have offsetting effects. They increase the efficiency of the economy and raises labor demand, and that could offset these negative effects of robots. Right, so we don't know, but that's how tech. No, but look at the. You can't. we can't this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anyway, it's a good. You can't resolve that issue here. You're right.
Thank you.
Yeah.